Hey team, I'm Alex. In this tutorial we're going to learn how to make the spotlight lower third that involves using light fixtures, light cones, 3D lens flares, and some text that also has some materials and bevels. So let's go ahead and get started. So we'll start off by taking a look at our video. This video right here, we have some words that fly in and then sit into place with our light fixture and beam and the lens flare, and then they scale to 0 in the Y direction and the light goes off. So let me play it back. Let's go all the way to the beginning. There we go. So we have some flickering in the light, some change of color in the light too, and then also at the end we're going to add a vignette and some color correction to the actual photo that we're using. So here we go. So let's jump into After Effects. Start off by creating our composition. By the way, if you are not using our plugin, you are using ProAnimator standalone, this is fine. Stay with us for the first couple steps and we'll be inside the plugin, and then everything is the same, and then as soon as we go back into After Effects you'll be done. So I'll let you guys know when. So we're going to start off by creating our composition. Here we go. We have 1280 by 720. That's what I'll be using. Click OK. Now create a solid layer. Make sure it's the same size as your comp, and I like it to be a different color than my comp, just so I can see the difference between my solid and my comp. So I'll click OK, and now let's apply our effect. We'll come over here, type in ProAnimator, double click on ProAnimator, and now we have our effect applied. So the first thing to do here is to make our text. So we'll select Create 3D Text, type in your text, type in her name, and I'll type in the company she works for, because this is a new company, why not make 3D news? So let's scale down the company name, scale up the name of the person, and notice how I'm just doing this very freely, just based on my eye. I'm just looking, okay, what looks good, what doesn't look good. Select everything. Let's change the leading, and there we go. So that looks good for now. We can always come back in and adjust it if we need to, but let's just click OK and we'll have our 3D text inside of After Effects. Alright, so now let's come here and click this button right here to open up our setup window, and what this is going to do is we now have our scene. Let me scale this so you can see all of it, and then what we need to do now is we need to set up our text in the position that we want it. So all these lines right here is this from this menu item. It might be off the bottom of your screen. Let's go to a different workspace, animation workspace. Here we go. So we have 12 field grid. That's what you're seeing. When I turn that off, it goes away. And what I actually want to do for this one is the lower third, and that will give me a line that separates the bottom third of my screen. When I hit render test, that line goes away, but it's just there so I can kind of position my text to see where I need to put my text. Cool, so let's go to the front, view front, so we make sure we're looking at the very front, and then let's zoom out and use our camera tools to position our text in the right position. Okay, so that's where we're going to want it for now. Once again, we can always change it later, but that's a good start. Cool, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and create a camera. The reason why we're going to create a camera is so that when we apply our animation presets to our words, the camera won't change. If you don't add a camera, the words will change and it won't look very fun. So let's go ahead, we'll just click this button right here, we'll create a camera. If you don't see this button, if you're using an older version of ProAnimator, just come up here to track, add camera track. So there you go. So now we have our camera, and now our words will stay in place when we add one of these object animation presets. So we have a whole bunch of different animation presets that we can choose from. We can just go through, and we want a fragmented preset or a zoom preset or a center preset. We can just click any one of these, and whoops, we need to select our object first and then go ahead and do it. And now when we do it, we have animation, it blows on, it holds for a little bit, and then it'll like blow off. So that's awesome. And of course you can go ahead and you can change any one of these parameters too. So like say we want to make it hold for longer, we can just grab this little doodad and stretch it out longer. Or we want it to be up higher, we can just stretch this guy up here. Any one of those things, it's gonna work just the same. So that's awesome. Nice easy way to make changes at any time, really. Cool. So now however, I don't want just any object animation preset. If you click this again, notice we have our lower third presets. Oh, how about that? We have 1 line and 2 lines. So since I have 2 lines, let's go ahead and select one of these. So we can go through these and just look and see what they look like. We have a contracting with some fade and fade off. We have some other ones that will do some slide-ons, some spins. I actually want to go to this one right here called rolling crash. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me a little bit of a spin into place and then hold, and it'll fade off. However, I don't want it to fade off completely. I want it to fade while it's scaling down. So what I actually need a transition in between those two. But you notice if I move this right here, there's no transition. So here's a fun little tip. If you see this, this is not a bug. You want these sometimes to have like cut stop scenes, or you don't want transitions. This is a way to do it. However, if you do want your transition, hold down the Shift key on your keypad, go in between these 2 poses and start dragging. And what that'll do is it'll give you your transition right there. And so now I can drag this out and animate anything within this transition. Cool. So however, for my personal case, I just want to actually delete this pose completely and then make a new one by double clicking, just because it had some other settings that I'm not sure that I want or not. So I will select this last pose, however, and I will take my Y down to 0 and scale. So now it scales down to 0 in that way, and then I'm going to come over to my pose actions, visibility, and select this menu item right here and go to invisible. And so now as it gets down to nothing, it just goes away. I'm also going to select this transition right here and go to my visibility, again, my visibility action, and go to fade off. Let's zoom over here so we can see this a little more. And so we can see that we have timing on our fade offs. We have this timing bar for a lot of things inside of our ProAnimator here, but what it's for is it's saying it's going from 0 to 100, and so the time that lasts from the start of the transition to the end of the transition is 0 to 100. So that's basically what exactly is happening. So what I want is I don't want it to start fading off the entire time. I want the fade off to start around the end. And so if I take that first start number down to 74 or so, you'll see it doesn't fade off until 74% through the animation, and then it starts fading off and goes away. So perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for in this type of animation. Cool. And so now the only thing I'm going to change here is I'm going to select this, two more things. I'm going to first of all select this middle pose and say that, all right, this isn't centered in my lower third. I want it centered. So I'm just going to move the Y position down. Notice you can move your X, Y, Z. I'm going to hit undo. It's very simple. You just put it right into place. I'm just repositioning my text. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the last pose while holding the Shift key down. I'm going to select this last transition, and then I'm going to drag all the way to the right. And notice what it's doing is it's keeping my same transition speed in my last pose, but now it's holding the middle a lot longer now. So now it rolls on, it holds for a lot longer, and then it will scale down to nothing. Perfect. Alright, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and model and texture our words. So we'll jump into our modeling window, workspace. We will select our text, and we are going to come down here to this object controls window, and we're going to select one of the outer bevels. And so notice we have this big list of different presets that come with the program. Once again, I think it's probably falling off the edge of your screen down here, but I'll let you know what I'm doing. So what you can do is you can just select this one of these bevels and then use your up and down arrow keys to go through. And so let me switch over to our user camera so we don't mess up our main camera. We're then going to zoom in. And notice what's happening here is that this bevel right here, this thing right here, this big bevel editor, is being extruded along the outside of each letter individually. So when I come in here and I actually change these bevels, these different types of bevels, what's happening is this bevel editor is changing, and it's changing our bevel on our text. And so of course you can come in here and edit this bevel any which way you want, and it'll update in real time for you inside of our 3D preview window. So that's a pretty sweet feature. And also, of course, like I was showing, you can select one of these and go through and just see what do these look like. What do these look like? I'm going to end on this one right here, this round edges small. And the reason being is because I'm going to give it a big depth right now, and then I'm going to decrease the bevel scale. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me a little bit more of a 3D look because it's deeper. The words are a lot thicker, and it doesn't fill up the insides of my letters like this E right here. If I increase the bevel scale too much, it starts, filling up that area, and I don't like that look. So I'm going to hit undo, and there we go. Now we have our letters all ready to go for us. Cool. So now that we have that, let's apply our materials. So we'll come over to our material workspace, and we will apply some materials onto this object. So the program comes with a bunch of materials that are all ready to go with spec maps and bump maps and all that good stuff. And a couple of them are pretty cool. Let me show you why. They're all really cool, but a couple of them are a little particular. So let me show you why. So I'll take this black one right here, and I will drag it onto our Word. And now I'm going to double click on this text. And notice inside of our material editor that we have this base color, this black base color, and our text is black. And so what's happening here is that this color is actually what's affecting the color of our text. So not all maps work like that. Sometimes the diffuse map, as some people will call it, the color map, whichever way you want to call it, is going to not be able to be changed. The color of it won't be able to change. However, this particular material only has a spec map and a bump map, but the base color can be changed. So I can come here, I can change it to maybe this blue color, click OK, or click the X, and now our spec and bump remain the same, but now it's a blue color instead. So that's definitely a fun way of going from different color to color. Say your client wants red, not blue. Easy enough, come here and just change it to red. So I'm going to take everything back to black though. And then I'm going to come up here to the very top, and I'm going to take this metallic-y chrome look, and I'm going to drag it onto the outside. And notice what it's doing right here is it's putting it into the second dock, and then I'm putting it onto the outside. And so now I have a nice metallic-y silver on the outside, and that black on the front and the back of our objects. So that's what we're going for in this look. Of course, you can change any one of these colors, and it'll update for you just by dragging and dropping it into the material docks. So there you go. Okay, so now that we have that, we can jump back over to our animation workspace, go back to our main camera, and now we have our letters all beveled, material put onto them, and the animation working like we want it to. Let's take this red end marker down to the back of the animation. Awesome. Cool. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and create our light and our light fixture. So I'm going to stop this for now. We're going to come up here to these 4 different buttons. If you don't know what these do, this is your camera button, your light button, your flare button, and your warp button. So you can warp any object, add 3D lens flares, and add 3D lights to your scene. So I will create a light. That's what I need to do right now. I need to create a light. I will then come down here to our type of light fixtures. It says show fixtures. I have a huge list right here. You probably won't see this huge list, but what you will see is you'll either see 10 or you'll see like 19, because we gave away 10 at the very beginning, and then we just gave away a free pack of 9 light fixtures as well. And you can make any of these yourself and drop them into the light fixture folder if you know what that is, or you can just wait and we'll keep giving out free ones, and we're also going to be selling some soon as well. So there you go. I'm going to come here. The link for the free pack is below this video, so go check that out if you don't have it already. But I'm going to come up here and select this Martin Mac TW1. And when I do that, I'm going to actually apply a fixture to this little teeny thing right here. I'm going to zoom out the Y, I'm going to zero out the Y and the Z, and then move my light all the way over, and then I'm going to scale up my pipe. And what that's going to do is going to scale up my fixture as well, and then rotate everything in the Z direction 180 degrees. So sorry if that was kind of fast. I'm also going to rotate the negative 90 degrees in the Y direction. And so what it's doing here is it's I just have a fixture, I scaled it up, and I repositioned it. That's all that's happening. Let's go down in let's move it down in the Y position, a little over in the X, and let's put this into negative 90. This rotates the actual light itself, not the whole fixture. All right. And so now notice how we can't still see our object. It's kind of hard to see our object because it's a parallel light. And so I'm going to switch this to a spotlight, like we were saying, and now we can't see it even more. So what's happening? You're asking, what's going on, Alex? Okay, well, let me tell you what's going on. So what's happening is that this light is now lighting up the words. Nothing's lighting up this light itself. So we have to create a fill light. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to do here is we're going to double click, type in light fixture, just so we can name our object. Then we're going to come up here and create a new light and call that fill light. And notice when we did that, it already lights up our object, and that's a simple, easy way. It has a parallel light at a negative 45-degree angle. So that's a nice, easy way of getting your objects to be just lit up. And of course, you can add shadows and stuff to your objects if you want. We're not going to do that in this project, though. Cool. So now that we have that, let's create our light cone. So select your light fixture, and then come down here to light cone material and select any one of these materials that come, or any light cones that come with the program. I will select bat cave beam. I will then increase the length and decrease the spot angle. And all we're doing here is kind of positioning it into place again. So let's take the scale down a little bit, move it over in the X direction, down in the Y. Okay. And that's looking pretty good. So now I want to hit render test. Notice our lines go away, all that green goes away, and we see we have our words with our fixture and our light cone. So sweet. Now let's go ahead and change the color of our lights, because I don't want it bright white. That's not very realistic. I want it a little bit a yellow color. So let's change that. Click the X again. That changed it to a yellow color. That looks a lot better. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a lens flare to that actual object. So what we can do is we can go here, select this lens flare button with making sure that your light fixture is selected, select this lens flare button, and now we have a flare applied to our object. However, you go, I don't see it, where is it? Well, however, what's happening here is that this visibility angle, 60 right here, the 60-degree visibility angle is where the light is in relative to the camera. So it has to be within 60 degrees of facing the camera in order to show the flare. However, we aren't there, and we want it to show at all times. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase that number to like 180, and now we start seeing that flare right there. However, it's a white flare, so let's go ahead, go over to our flare swatches, and pick a different one of these flares to work with. So I'm going to pick this Presence, nice blue flare, apply that, and notice now it's starting to show a little bit better. That's pretty sweet. We'll decrease the flare scale a little bit. Alright, so now that we decrease the flare scale, we like that, increase the visibility angle, let's actually go ahead and animate our light. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click in the timeline right here. Let's shrink this pose down a little bit just so it's the same length as our object track, and then let's move it off in the left direction. Okay, and then we're actually going to rotate it towards the camera a little bit and decrease the brightness. So now when it moves on, it actually rotates into place. We see the lens flare and it hits into place. Cool. Now that we have that, however, we want it to get on before the text gets on. So we're just going to take this pose and move it toward the left, and then we're going to stretch this pose out to be as long as the text pose. Cool. So when I play that back, we see the light comes on with our light fixtures and our beam and our lens flare. However, it needs to come off as well. So I'm going to stop that, double click on our timeline to create a new pose, and then move it off in the left negative X direction, rotate it towards us a little bit, and take the brightness down to 0. So let's play that back and see what we have. Cool. All right. So that looks pretty good so far, right? We have everything kind of set up. Now let's do a couple more adjustments. One thing is that when it's holding for in this area right here, it doesn't look very real when it's just sitting there. So let's give it some flicker and change the color of the light a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll select this middle pose. We'll then come over to our light actions, and in this menu at the very bottom, there's a flicker all small. When we do that, we can play us back and see our light actually flickers just a little bit. Very subtle, but it adds a little more realism to our scene. What we can also do is we can go over here to Light Actions, Color Actions, and select our random hue. And so when we play that back, we notice our color actually changes as the light flickers as well. So that's a very cool look, and it gives it a little more realism to our scene. All right, so now this is pretty much it for the lower third. One last thing is you might have it coming on and you see this iris that's going through the top part of our scene, and you might be going, oh, well, that's not good. I don't want these irises to go. It's supposed to be a lower third. Fine, I get it. Let's select your flare pose, and if you see this little editor right here, this little swatch, you can double click the swatch to bring up your flare editor. And in this flare editor, you can come here and see these different single iris. Just turn those off. Different items. There's a bunch of tutorials on showing how to master this window, but as of right now, it's pretty simple as of just turning them on or off if you don't want to go ahead and just edit them. So come here, click OK, and now we see our flare has changed, and as the flare comes on, we no longer get those long irises. Okay, so now one last thing before we go into After Effects is that I want to take our words and move them a little farther forward, because if you notice right here, our words are sort of getting cloudy inside of our spotlights right there. They're sort of being washed out. So what I want to do is I just want to move them in front of our light. So that's pretty simple. We'll take our pose right there, we'll then move it farther in the Z direction to move it out of the light. You see how it's kind of coming out of the light, and then move it over in the X direction and up in the Y. And now when we hit render test, our words are now out of the light, and as they drop in, all of the animation and everything stays exactly the same, and it looks good. Okay. So now, if you are using the standalone, this is it for you. You can keep watching and see some tricks on how to use After Effects, but otherwise just take this rendered out video and put it into your NLE. However, if you are using After Effects, let's go ahead and click the OK button. That'll take your scene, put it into the After Effects scene, and now we can watch as it goes and moves along and renders. However, it is taking a little bit of time to render because it's becoming a more extensive scene with lights and lens flares and the cones and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, I'm going to turn it to draft mode. I'm going to click this twice because I'm using After Effects CC. If you're using After Effects CS6 or earlier, you can just click it once and I'll go to draft mode. And now as I scrub through here, it moves a lot faster, and as I let go, everything looks pretty decent still. It's our OpenGL, not fully rendered, not final quality rendered, but pretty close. So you can still see what's going on. And when you're ready to render, you can just click that button again and it'll be final quality. Alright, so now that we have that, let's add our image into our scene. So I'll come in here, I'll go to File, Import, File, select your picture, click on Open, and now that we have this, we will drag it into our scene, and we have our news anchor, newscaster. I will zoom out because it's a very large photo. I will scale it down. Let's scale it down right here. Make it the same proportions by holding down the Shift key. Zoom back in, and let's move it down. Okay, so let's give it a little bit of a zoom in look. By doing that, we're just going to mess around with, we're going to animate the scale. So press the S key on your keypad to bring up scale. I will then go to the very first frame and click this little stopwatch to create a keyframe. Go to the very end of your animation and increase the scale just a little bit. There we go. So now it looks like it's zooming into her face as the words come on and then go off. Okay. Good, and so now she looks good. This newscaster looks good, but she looks a little washed out to me. So I'm going to add some color adjustments and a vignette. So let's go ahead. We're going to add the vignette first. We'll do Layer, New, Solid. This is a fun, easy way of doing it. You can click on the color, change it to black, click OK, and click OK again. And now make sure it was the same size as your comp, by the way. Go up to your ellipse tool and double-click your ellipse tool to get this nice ellipse to take up the whole scene. Click inverted and click the F key on your keypad to adjust the feather. And so let's feather the black part a little bit, and then let's click the T key on your keypad to reduce the opacity. Okay, so now notice that it's such a big difference that you have just holding the scene in with your vignette, and so that's a fun tip for people. And here's another one, is to add a color adjustment. So we're going to come up here to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer, and then come over to our Effect and Presets and add a curve. We'll double click that to add it to our adjustment layer, and then we're going to come in here and take down some of the highs and lows and give her a little more tan. So just like that, we have now changed her from a washed out person to a nice tan, vibrant person. So there you go. So now that our animation plays back, also notice that our color adjustments are being applied to our objects, which make it look pretty good. However, if you don't want that, you can just take your objects here and you can move them below the ProAnimator. This is the ProAnimator layer. and now they won't be applied to your 3D words. So there you go. That's about it for this. If you have any questions, please email me directly at alex@zaxwerks.com. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time.